Hello, everyone. It is me, Tillman, once again. We are continuing going through our crucial conversations for our devotional. Last week, we started to talk about mastering our stories and the stories that we tell ourselves when crucial conversations come up. There isn't this jump from what we hear to feeling. There is a spot in the middle where we can take control of when we tell ourselves stories, because not we don't have perfect information. We take the information that we do have and we create a story that goes in line with what we think is happening, and it affects how we feel and how we act. And last week we talked about the very basics of understanding that we do tell ourselves stories and how to avoid those. This week, it's specifically about three very specific stories that we tell ourselves that hurt our relationships, and they really, really destroy any chance of being able to listen to the other person, because we can't see anything past the story. And we have to be very careful when we're telling ourselves these stories. And just a refresher from last week, we were talking about a time in my life when I was working with a youth kid, and I was having a trouble communicating with him because he was great during one-on-one. He was always seeking out that time with me, but when it came to being in a group setting, he was a very, very different kid, and I couldn't understand why. His uh, his dad had been his youth pastor for a long time, and there was some stories that I told myself that weren't true, and it came down to a time where I said, you know what, we need to sit down and have a crucial conversation. We need to get down to the bottom of what's going on so that we both can go forward in a better way. And we're going to continue to talk about that. But before we get to that, I'm going to share these different stories that we tell ourselves and how they could have each affected that conversation with that specific student. The first one that we tell ourselves is called the victim story. And in the victim story, we say it's not my fault. I'm the victim here. Like, it's being done to me. It's not my fault. And when we do this, this is a big problem, because it's saying that we are not responsible for any of the blame. And when you look at the story I was just talking about with me and the other kid, if I, in my mind, am telling myself the story of, okay, this kid, he's the kid of the other of the pastor. He's never had anyone other than his dad. This group is a younger group. It's just he's doing all these things. I'm the victim here. He's doing this to me. He's being disruptive to me, and he's the one that's causing all of the issues. If I say that, then nothing is going to get fixed, because in my mind, I don't have any part of the blame of anything that's going on. I don't have any control of this story if I am the victim. If I'm the victim, I can't change anything. And that's what it ends up coming down to, is the fact that it's being done to me. I can't get out from underneath this, when in all actuality, in almost every situation, there's always a way for us to take some responsibility, for us to take some control. On the same side, but looking at them instead of us, so we could tell ourselves the story of the victim, that I am not the one to blame. And instead, we can also tell the story, the number two, that they are the villain. They are to blame. Every problem that goes wrong, every issue is because of this nincompoop, this silly, awful person, and what they are doing. Now, in this case, it's very similar to the victim story, but instead of focusing on ourselves, we're focusing on them. And instead of us retreating and saying, "Oh, I can't change anything because it's just I'm under their control," it is that aggressive of, like, they're the villain, so I have to be the hero, and I have to fight against them, and I have to do everything in my power to take them down. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if I call them names. It doesn't matter. I've got to take down this villain. It leads to very aggressive, very attacking oriented solutions to problems, which again doesn't fix anything. If I tell myself that this kid is doing this to me, like, it's It is on purpose. I have to take control of the situation. He can't disrupt my classroom anymore. I'm going to put my foot down and I'm going to stop. And like, that's going to destroy any relationship I even had with the student. Like, that's not going to get us anywhere. And finally, the third thing that we can tell ourselves is the helpless story. The story that says, well, I can't do anything to change it, so I won't. We look at this situation, and again, it comes down to that idea of responsibility and power. And we're looking at it and saying, I am powerless. Like, I can't do anything to change this, so why should I even try? And this is the biggest story that people who they flee instead of attack, that they use. I can't do anything to change this, so I'm just going to avoid the situation. I'm going to be anywhere where I can just not be a part of this because I can't change it anyway. And if I look at that with the student of, man, I can't change how you feel about our classes. I can't change how you're behaving in the big group settings. I can't change your sarcasm. Then nothing will change because he is still going to keep doing what he's doing because of the reasons that he's doing it. And now I am taking a step back to the point where I'm saying, I can't do anything, so I'm not even going to try. There's no reason for me to. So nothing will ever change. And the true ending of the story is that we did have a crucial conversation. I sat down with him one night. Instead of cleaning with him after the service like we always did, stacking up the chairs and everything, I told him, hey, I'll do that in a little bit, but we need to talk. And I talked and I shared how his sarcasm and his snide remarks and his messing around during group times really bugged me. And I felt bad, and I felt like I wasn't being the leader I should have been, especially since this was my first place being a youth pastor. And when I was vulnerable and I shared that with him, saying that, like, I'm not the victim here, but I'm not solely not to blame either. I just want to understand what's going on. I was able to create a safe environment for him to explain what was really going on. And what was happening was just our group was young. It was mostly junior hires, and he wasn't getting fed what he wanted. And the way I was trying to be able to feed him, even though our group was young, was by putting him in a leadership role. But that's not what he wanted. He still wanted to learn. He still wanted to glean as a student, not as a leader. And we ended up coming to a headway there. And I talked to his dad the next day of the fact that it wasn't the right group for him. And there was a youth group about 30 minutes away with where a lot of his friends went. And he was at soccer practice before youth group anyway. He was already up there. And we came to the realization that when it came to group things that we were doing, we'd always invite him and he'd always be a part of it. And when he was there, he'd be more of a leader role. But on regular Wednesdays, instead of coming to our youth group, even though I was his youth pastor, I lived across the street from him and he went to our church, he would go to the other youth group because what they had there was what he needed. But that would never have happened if we hadn't had our conversation. Nothing would have changed. He still wouldn't have been being fed. I would have still been having to deal with his snide remarks and his sarcasm and his disruption during services and group events. And it really changed the dynamic of how we worked together. We were able to work much better during those times that we were part of the same group because we said, there's something that needs to change here. And it wasn't all great because that meant that I didn't get to be with him. But it did finish up well. Well, I'm glad that story finished up well. Not every crucial conversation I've ever had has. And when they haven't gone well, it's because I told myself a story and the other person told themselves one. And our stories didn't match. We have to be careful about what the stories we are telling ourselves are. Because we can't control their stories, what they're hearing, but we can control ours. Remember to always look back to the facts. Thanks for joining us for another devotional. See you guys on Wednesday. Bye.